Friends of the show, Philip Atiba Solomon, who's the chair and professor of African American Studies at Yale University. He's also the co-founder and CEO of the Center for Policing Equity. It's an important research center that aims to advance racial justice. Also joining me is our old friend Sonia Pruitt, retired police captain for the Montgomery County Police Department in Maryland. Pruitt is a professor of criminal justice at Howard University. Thank you to both of you for being with us. We have spent, over the last 5 years together talking about things. And Philip, I have to ask you, because to me, it's a bit of an unanswerable question. Are we better off than we were in the wake of George Floyd's murder, where we were having a remarkable national conversation about accountability, which ended up in a criminal trial that actually ended up in looking like something like accountability? Where are we today compared to where we were after the trial of Derek Chauvin?
Yeah, I'll tell you maybe in 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So today what we're seeing is, as you said, the federal government deciding that we're not going to be pursuing consent decrees. On this past Tuesday, there's an executive order that says they're going to unleash law enforcement just before the commemoration of 5 years on the lynching of George Floyd. And it's very clear that we have a sort of infrastructure that wants to be attacking the gains for accountability that we'd had. And at the same time, also this past Tuesday, it's $100 million in the Washington state budget that moves towards hiring more law enforcement. But within that, $750,000 that's moving towards fix-it tickets and helmet vouchers and other things that are alternatives, so that poor folks who are getting tickets on the road are actually given money from the government to keep them safer rather than punishment.
Right.
So there's a little bit of both, and there's seeds of optimism, but only if we're interested in building in and over the long term.
Sonia, let's talk a little bit about consent decrees. It's one of those conversations that it's a word that is not common if you're not in the world of policing or following the Department of Justice. But in some cases, they're important. In fact, a lot of municipalities that have them use those resources, use the idea that they've got that supervision to fix things that are hard to fix. Minneapolis Police was a perfect example of a chief who I think wanted to do the right thing at the time, and a police union leader who was just not on the right side of history, clashing. And the consent decree helps a police organization like that get better.
Yes. And, I'm glad that you brought that up, because the Memphis Police Department was under investigation. That investigation has now been stopped because of what we're talking about today. And one of the things that the council said in Memphis was that, well, this is going to cost us millions of dollars. But, consent decrees do come with resources. They come with all kinds of money to put towards training and policy, to undergird policy, and to help these police departments get on their feet in areas where they are lacking. And so consent decrees for the public, consent decrees are a really, really important part of what we will call the checks and balances of the government. It's the checks and balances for police departments across the country.
Philip, I remember you and I having a conversation, and I think it might have had to do with Philadelphia, about the fact that a lot of police departments are recognizing that sometimes a police officer's first interaction with a young black man has got something to do with a traffic stop or something and sometimes we've seen those go wrong. So there was some kind of a discussion about, let's do things that don't cause us to have the wrong interactions with people the first time around. How is that developed?
Yeah, so always glad to talk about Philadelphia, greatest city in the history of the world. Go Birds. But what they were doing in Philadelphia also echoed with a pilot program in Los Angeles, also happening, we hope, in Washington State and the state of Virginia, is saying that, you know what, when you get a ticket for expired tags or broken taillight, that's not an immediate safety emergency.
Right.
So what we can do is send the ticket home.
Yes.
We can actually not bring a badge and a gun into a situation where law enforcement, by the way, is incredibly nervous, because those are the situations that are most likely to lead to surprise officer-related injuries. We can make sure that we're focused on traffic accidents, which is the reason why law enforcement is ostensibly on the roads. And the results in the places that are trying it looks so far are you get less officer-related injuries, less use of force, less arrests, more money for the municipality, and fewer crashes. When you focus on the things that matter, it turns out you get better outcomes. But instead, what's happening at the federal government and too long in law enforcement is we're focusing on punishing the folks who have the least, as opposed to providing the care that prevents them from being in the crisis in the first place.
One of the things, Sonia, in the wake of George Floyd was a lot of pressure on police officers, including those who had nothing to do with bad interactions with the public, but a sense that policing was not a great profession, didn't pay enough for the risks that were going into it, training's not good enough. And there were police departments, including here in the city of New York, where became very hard to recruit and hire at the rate and level that they were looking to do. Where are we in terms of what it's like to be a police officer in America right now?
What a great question as a practitioner. So I am of the mind that anyone who is interested in protecting their community and really interested in that and really want to do the right thing, they will still apply to be the police all across this country, right? But then there are police officers who are dissatisfied with the public's dissatisfaction. 72% of people believe that there was no change in policing since George Floyd's death. There were actually police officers who knelt after the death of George Floyd in solidarity with the community, who maybe a couple of weeks later were told by their police unions, you better get up off your knees and get your fist out of the air and get back to work. And so that was only, 5 years ago? The idea of community-informed policing has really, to me, lost traction. And it is affecting our hiring. While there are some law enforcement agencies that really embrace progressive and transformative policing, there are some who really want to remain stuck in the past, in a system that was built on the oppression of Black and Indigenous people in the South and on laborers looking for a fair wage and safe working conditions in the North. So the question becomes, can you reform something that is working as it was designed to do? Can we get people to come inside of these departments? Because you can only disrupt a system if you have someone on the inside, in my opinion. And who's being served by further undergirding unethical and unlawful actions by law enforcement? Who's being served?
Yeah, and again, to Phil's point, a lot of police don't want to be involved. That's not what they got into policing to do, to be in a court case about somebody who ended up dead at their hands. Sonia brings up the issue of Memphis, saying, look, the consent decrees cost money, but there are resources. One of the issues is if you don't put these consent decrees in place, you don't remedy these issues, people get sued. Now we saw with Derek Chauvin, we saw actual convictions in the George Floyd case, but there's always a lawsuit. And that costs taxpayers and police departments and cities actual money.
Yeah, it absolutely does, which is why in the executive order to unleash law enforcement, I cannot overstate how shocking it is to have that language coming from the president's office. They said, we want to have money available for law enforcement that gets sued. We're in a moment where we have a federal government that has decided we know what the stakes are, we know what the warring sides are going to be, and we are picking a side. It's not law enforcement. It's law enforcement that the communities that are most distressed and most vulnerable feel like are violating their rights. And I have to be clear, in this moment, this is not a one-time thing. It's not unprecedented. This is a generation's worth of work that is culminating in these movements, right? It is not the case that we had the war on universities that just started now. That started under Nixon, who identified his enemies as those who were college-educated elites, which is why in the first Trump tax cut—
By the way, were characterized as Jews and Black people.
Jews and Black people, to be very clear, right? Which is why during the first Trump tax cuts, if you want to call them that, they had the first tax on endowment incomes to universities. One of the things that I wish was being covered more right now is that those tax cuts, tax increases, just 1.4% during the last one, are up to 21% in the one that just passed the House. That's a sea change. But it doesn't happen if you don't have the incremental of the first version, right? So all of the attacks on accountability systems, the National Institute of Justice grants that have come down, the repository for corrupt officers that's coming down, the federal use of force database that's come down, all of that is generations in the making. And until we have a generational strategy to push back, as you said earlier, one step forward, two steps back. The good news is the truth usually will out. And when we've got that on our side, on the other side of that, then even if our numbers are less, our money is less, I do believe that we can
The cause is advancing, and I think you might be right. I'm grateful to both of you for your friendship, support, and your analysis that you've given our viewers in the last 5 years and more. Philip Atiba Solomon is the co-founder and CEO of the Center for Policing Equity. Sonia Pruitt is a retired police captain for the Montgomery County Police Department.